Welcome to part 2 of building the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder version 2. And in this video, we will focus on building the filament blocks. To start, assuming you've got 8 each of the bases, the filament paths, and the top hats, these print with supports built in. And so the first step, of course, is to remove the supports from all these pieces. It'll take you a little while. There's quite a few, but it's nice that these supports are built in. With the top hats done, here I'm moving forward to work on the filament paths. And they've got a little piece here on the hinge. They've got some support here at the filament exit area. This is where I'm beginning to suspect maybe I didn't have my printer tuned as good as I thought. Took a little more effort than I was expecting, but still the piece comes off. And then, of course, this piece reveals the entire interior. And got to finish all 8. So it takes a little while. I'm speeding this up here because I don't think anyone wants to see all of this. Once you're done with those, it's on to the bases. For some reason here, I feel like playing musical parts. But anyway, so here I'm just working on pulling all the supports off of the bases. I found these a little bit harder to clean. And in a few cases, there was some leftover or I guess rough edges to some of the filament. But you can see quite a bit of supports. So here I am using a small file to try and clean up some of the rough spots from where I pulled off the supports. And you should go through and clean, or rather smooth these all up. And in some cases, a file may not work. Here I've got my X-Acto knife where I intend on using the edge, the straight edge, or the blade to scrape wherever I can as well. And here I'm doing the same on the filament paths. There are definitely some rough spots here, and so I'm just scraping those off. Goes quickly, but again, there's 8. Once these are complete, to complete the top hats, you'll need these BMG gears, shafts, and bearings. Now the kit contains 2 kinds. Unlike the ERCF documentation, we're going to be using the type that don't use needle bearings, and they're the ones that use these small precision bearings here in the bin. And so here I'm just pulling them out and getting ready to assemble these. So here you can see I'm assembling the extruder gears. I'm simply inserting the sealed bearings here and then flipping them over so I can do the other side. Then once those are done, I insert the shafts. However, to assemble these, I pull out the shaft, set the gear in, reinsert the shaft. And it might require a little bit of force here to get through the ABS, but that's okay. We don't want the pins falling out. And you should test these. They should spin nice and freely once they're assembled. Here I'm inserting the magnets into the bases. I leave the magnets, uninstall magnets, in a stack, and then I place them, well, the first one was inserted, then I place the stack back on. I'm trying to make sure that these are all the same polarity going in, because these are going to be acting as magnetic springs. And here I'm using the back of a tweezer to help me push it in without hurting my fingers. But again, I keep popping the stack onto the previous magnet to make sure the polarity is correct. And then you just knock through these really quick. And they should repel each other. The kit comes with three MR85 ZZ bearings that we need to insert into the base. And as you can see here, you use this little tool that you 3D printed, and there's a certain number of these. So if you're going to have 8 filament blocks, you need a minimum of 3, and these should be on 2, 5, and 7. This chart is on page 60 of the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder manual. So the finished bearing insertion should look like this. Should be nice, flush, and even. Here is the tool that you 3D print, a couple of bearings, and the other 2 blocks that I'm going to insert these in. You simply insert the bearing, place this in, and push. And that's it, and you're done. This goes fast and easy with this really nice tool. And then you're done. To clean off the support for the latches, grab something to rest the latch upon, and then flip it over and use something thin enough. There's a thin 3mm hole there, and you can simply push these out really kind of quickly. Once those are done, we attach the latches, and they simply slide on here. And then install the screw. Be careful, don't make these too tight. You actually want these to move fairly freely, but not be loose either. You should be able to clamp these. They are a bit of a tight fit. What I'm doing here is incorrect. Don't pull on the long part of the latch like I did. Pull on the short part. After those are complete, you need to assemble these PTFE tubing adapters, or clips is maybe the proper word here. And they come in parts. And so it seems to me the best way to do that, get a hard surface, set these up upside down, and then something solid. It took quite a bit of force to push these in, but once they do, they should operate like this and spring in and out nicely. Once those are complete, we can finish the filament paths. Here you can see I've already inserted the magnet, again in reverse polarity of what they'll be facing. These take quite a bit of force. I tried using my fingers and I just didn't quite have the strength. Again, could be my prints were too tight. But if you push down on a hard surface like this, they will work. And so you'll need to get through them all. There's a lot of numeric labels to install. And again, for me, they were awfully tight. So I found if I just filed a little bit on the, I guess, sharp edges, it provided enough clearance where these would slide in a little easier. Next, you need to install the base traps. There's 2 kinds. I actually printed both. One of them uses these really small set screws, and the other one doesn't. The build manual for the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder recommends the ones with the set screws. Again, maybe it's the tuning of my printer. I don't recommend these. Here you can see me installing them. I went through and installed them all, and then when I started to assemble these filament blocks, at one point when I had to pull them open again, they were breaking. They were too long. And so I ended up switching, and you'll see me do this a little bit later, to the ones that don't use the set screws. Next, you'll want to assemble and test fit the filament blocks. You can see one here that's assembled. You can see the magnets acting like a spring, and then here you can see the clip working. And again, you really should use the smaller handle rather than the length of the latch to latch it. Now you want to test assemble these, make sure they work. Then we can install the top hats. And you simply flip these over. You've got a little tab, or really a hinge, sits back there. And then you can pop the latch, like you see me attempting to do here. Or you can simply push down and they will snap right in without you opening up the latch. And again, simply go through all of them. You're really test fitting, making sure this all works okay. And that's about it for this. So now we can start installing these filament blocks. And you simply take these BMG gears, the ones that have no bearings, and we go ahead and insert one of the nuts as well. And what I'm doing here is simply screwing this just very lightly, enough to hold it and align it. And then we push it down to the end, including this BMG gear. Then you can slide it down, tighten the M3 bolt. And the extruder gear you can leave loose. You can tighten it a little bit. We're going to have to go back and adjust these later with actual filament. But as you insert these, you want the D or the flat part of the shaft facing upward. And that way you'll be able to access all the set screws in the BMG gears. And you'll definitely need it that way later on for your final adjustments. And then you can insert the filament guide on top of the block. This wasn't the easiest thing to do. You've got to get the rear hinge in, and then notice, as I mentioned earlier, I broke this. I tried to replace it with a new one. I highly recommend you go with the ones without the set screws. That said, you should try the ones with the set screws. Again, it could be my printer settings, tuning. There was something not quite right here. Again, these are the ones that are recommended. They just didn't work for me, and I ended up replacing them all. Here you can see I have them installed, and here you can see where I eliminated all the set screws. They're sitting there mostly in pieces or bent and broken. But anyway, I'm using the knob here to turn this to make sure it's running smoothly. The belt is adjusted properly. You really shouldn't feel any problems. I mean, again, I'm just checking for smoothness here because when we power this thing up eventually, well, we need it to run smoothly. So now you should take a piece of filament and insert it through the path. It should go easily. Notice I'm having a little bit of trouble here. You can also try it from the back, which is actually where the filament would enter the filament block. And it does move through. You should take a look. This should be aligned with the filament path on the BMG gear. If not, adjust it, move it, adjust the set screw until this is aligned as it should be. And then you need to do this for all of them. And also, don't forget to use Thread Locker at this point, especially since you're taking time to adjust these. I actually do plan on going back, but I'm anticipating some more adjustments. Here, I'm inserting the top, and notice now when I push the top, the gear is engaged and the filament works smoothly. And again, you should not feel any major resistance here. Once you've finished adjustments, here I'm inserting the top hats on all of them. And I'm going to test this just one more time to make sure. I did read up a little bit on ERCF, and the one thing that seems to be a common theme is tuning and adjustments for this to actually work well. So I'm trying to be extra careful and do as much tuning as I can up front while it's in parts, and that way hopefully I'll have a lot less later. But again, here I'm pushing down and checking to make sure when the gear is engaged that everything is running smoothly. And it's looking pretty good. Next, we install the Bipass block and the legs. And here I'm inserting the T-nuts. This is what I believe was the orientation in the manual. And I say believe because I actually ended up changing this a little bit, and you'll see why. Before that, install one more of the PTFE tube connectors. Again, pushing down here, making sure it works properly, and making sure it's inserted evenly all the way around. And it is. And make sure you insert it the right way. And I hate when the T-nuts stick out like that. I wish I would have fixed this on the other side. And so this is why I changed the orientation of the T-nuts. And I will probably do that shortly in this video. So I know this is boring, but I left this part in to assure you that you're not the only one that sometimes has trouble aligning these T-nuts with 3D printed parts, especially when they're covered like this. I find this really irritating, but anyway. And now the flip. And finally, alignment. spoke too soon. Now, finally, alignment. By the way, for any of those who have already built one or are way beyond me in terms of finishing construction of this, especially if you have experience, if you see me doing something wrong, I would love it if you would post into the comments section and let me know. Um, because I'm sure I'll pay for it later. Somewhere there's a mistake. And if some way, somehow I can let people know, whether by having them read my comments or by correcting in a later video, I would love to, because I'd like to think I'm helping people and not making their task harder. So if you have some tips or comments, please post. And here I've inserted the legs, or the leg for the bottom. And again, testing, making sure it all seems to work okay. It all looks okay. Yes, I'm going all black, and hopefully at some point I'll add a little accent colors, but for now it's all black. If you found this video useful, please click like and subscribe.